I guess I'll record a little bit. This is all over monitoring, seeing the process ID, using like a netstat command and correlate the process ID with what's running in Task Manager. So you can determine if it's something legitimate or somebody hacking your system, or a bad program, malware or something on your system that's running, trying to steal all of your information. Any questions? Cool, no questions. Other cool things you can do in Task Manager. You can set the processor affinity. And affinity is something we'll learn, you'll probably learn more about when you get into, if you go into virtualization a little bit more. But affinity, if you have more than one processor, you can force the program to run only on a specific core of your computer. I can show you better if I look at my host system instead of my virtual machine, because my host system actually has more than one processor available. So maybe I don't want to zoom here to possibly crash my system and use 100% processing power across all CPUs. I could uncheck the all processor and tell it I only want it to run on core 2 inside my CPU, because I got a quad core system. So that's process affinity. Did you know you could do that? Did you even know what affinity meant? Do you even know what affinity means now? That you can choose what core that you can run. You can either affinity all or affinity one, basically.
I know Infinity.
Not infinity, affinity.
It just means that they have they kind of like each other.
Yeah, so well, affinity in this term is just the ability to specify core that you run on. Like which cores do you like to run on? So in this, basically, it's, you got a process that, I guess with affinity, which core does that process like, and you make it only pair with that core. Or you can make it like all of them and it pairs with everybody. They got a new Ryzen out that's 64 core. Y'all seen that one from AMD? It's for content developers, people that encode videos and stuff. Like, yep, here's your 64 core, 128 threads. It's kind of insane. They had Epic for servers at 64 core, but now they've released one for the desktop. Run Crisis in CPU mode only. Don't need it. No, not quite. If anybody's heard of stuff like that, I'm sure some of you have. Crisis Remastered. Okay, so other things you can do. You can set the priority. You studied this in operating systems class. If you remember, you had nice values in Linux. Nice values from somewhere around negative 19 to positive 19 or 20. The higher the number, the nicer the program will run, meaning it will back out of the way and let other processes have access to the CPU. The lower the number, and especially when you get into the negatives, the more stingy and that the process is. And it will take everything. You ever have a sibling that wants to take everything from you? And they think they're better than you? Anybody? No? Okay. Y'all had good childhoods or no siblings. You had a what? So that's what the above normal high in real time, that would be the same thing in Linux as getting into negative values. And then below normal and low, that'd be getting into positive values. You don't have the granularity that you have in the Linux and Unix operating systems, because you have about 38 to 40 levels from negative to positive. And here you only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different levels you can choose from. Microsoft decided you don't need 40 freaking levels like they do in Unix systems. Unix people think they need more, but, you know. So most things run at normal speed. Typically, you would want to move stuff maybe to below normal or low. That would be processes that run on your system that may not be critical. Maybe you're running for home computers, like your house computer. Maybe you're running a some type of molecule folding program or something where you're studying different type of chemistry formulas and stuff, maybe for a COVID vaccine, computer-related COVID vaccine and calculations like that. There's a program called SETI at home. I think it's still active. Or did you analyze radio signals from space to analyze any anomalies and then report it back to the system? Things like that that need to run at 100% because there's so much math behind it. You can run them at below or low normal. And that way they're running anytime that your system's not needing the processor. So your processor constantly runs at 100%, but they always back out of the way if something else runs. And supposedly it helps your system not feel slow, even though it's running constantly in the background. If you're playing a game and you want a little bit better frame rates, or if there's just a process that's really critical and you need it to run, you can bump it up a little bit higher so that it so that other processes on the system, maybe like a web browser or something, has to back out of the way and let this database scan or database check or billing report run and get done faster. Or if you're like me and you're playing a game back in the day and you're just like, and you learned about this and you thought, let's see if the game runs faster. And you figure out it does. It runs a few frames per second faster when you put it above normal. You're running around in Quake 2 and shooting people, and you're like, sweet, this runs a little bit faster. Well, what does high do? So you bump it up to high so you can get even better frame rates. And it does work. You know, go from like 16 frames per second up to like 28 or 30 frames per second. Like, wow, cool. You're running around, shoot people. The only thing when you have high level, the game takes over needed Windows processes to actually keep the system stable and running. So you only get a couple of minutes of gameplay before the thing locks up. And then the whole system freezes because the Windows processes actually keep Windows stable, don't have access to the processor. And then you can set it at real time and you can get like 60 frames per second. Like, sweet, rolling. Like, this is old back in the day where the monitor refreshed to like crappy, but actually weren't too bad. You got like 85, 60, 85 hertz on the old big CRTs. Yeah, back CRT days. So you put it at real time and you get about 4 or 5 seconds of really fast frame rate. So you can take about 2, 3 steps and fire a bunch of times because, well, it's got fast frame rate, fire quicker, and then the whole system freezes. And you're wishing that you had a system that would run that fast, stable. Okay, so enough of bad stories, but that's a warning for you. Running anything at high in real time is pretty dangerous because it probably will run that process, especially if it's a process that's going to use lots of processing power. It will consume the CPU and not let Windows itself access the processor, and your system will lock up. So why is it there? I guess so you can see just how fast you can lock your system up. But I guess if a process isn't running 100% CPU and it's running like 7 or whatever, it may run. You'd get some weird inconsistencies probably on your computer. So you could go do that on your sibling's computer and set like an innocuous program. Maybe they got some type of tray program that just kind of sits there. You could set it at real time, and their system would probably randomly start locking up, and they would never figure out why. Okay, don't do evil stuff. That's bad. Nobody wants to do evil stuff to their siblings.
Can't you just turn it off and turn it back on and it up, or just lock?
Yeah, you can turn it off, turn it back on. Now, if you could get into and script that process to start up with a real-time priority every time the computer booted, instead of changing it, or if you just don't want to be like that permanently messed up on the machine, because it might be hard to fix the machine if it's scripted to start in real time. It may lock up before it can even boot all the way up. You just want to be annoying, and when your sibling leaves the room, you sneak in there and set something to real time, and it'll probably become unstable. Why am I telling you evil thoughts and how to do bad stuff? I get paid to, and that's I know what y'all will remember. Y'all remember about processor priority. You might remember about Affinity too. If I was going to use priority, I most likely would set Affinity up and like single thread something. I would go and set Affinity and make sure that it could only run on one. It denied me rights. Make sure it could only run on one core in a multi-core system, and then set the priority at real time. That way there'd be other cores for other Windows processors to access and keep the system running. And there are some programs that are single-threaded designed. They're not designed to take advantage of multiple cores. There's some rendering tools and things that are out there that only use one thread to work. So if you want your rendering tool or something like that that's older, that's single-threaded, doesn't know about the symmetrical multiprocessing, you can set the Affinity on it, and you can set the priority to real time, and you give it 100, guaranteed 100% for that core. Okay, other things you can use besides Task Manager to monitor your system. Well, one of them is the event viewer. It used to be a question, what 3 event logs are always in every single Windows event viewer? And the acronym was ASK. Application, security, system is in every single version of Windows NT platform, all the way back to 1993, I believe. ASS. The things in there that you can view. Application is specifically about applications running on your system. So anything that you've installed into the computer system, including Microsoft servers like Exchange Server or Microsoft SQL Server, anything like that, anything that you have to double click a program and install other than the operating system, install itself. would have errors dumped to the application. Security, anything dealing with login, logout, access to files and stuff, or auditing that you can turn on and off, show up under security. And then system, that would be anything with the Windows kernel itself, drivers. So anything that's a Windows core service that got installed with the installation disk from the operating system or thumb drive or whatever, any of their issues would show up under system. That way, if something's not working, if a program's not working on your computer, you would first check application server. If Windows, like the network adapter or some type of thumb drive that you plugged in or something like that's causing some problems, any type of hardware device, driver things, you look under system. And then if you think somebody's trying to log into your system, brute force the thing or something, security would be the log to look at. The security log. Let me show you some quirks about security log while we're here. Let me go to the properties of the security log. So with the security log, it has 128 meg. It's set to override events as needed, oldest first. You could also archive the log when full. Do not override events. That should just create new archives and create new logs. Then you got the last one, do not override events. Clear logs manually. So if you're really trying to track people trying to hack your system, you might want to click that. And then there's another registry setting. It's actually group policy now. You can go and configure it under group policy that if the security log fills up, stop the network service. It used to crash the system. It blue screen it. I don't think it quite blue screens anymore. It just stops any network activity if the security log comes up. That would prevent anybody from continuing to brute force. Or if you just forgot to keep this log rotated and cleaned out, then it would quickly, everybody would start yelling at you, we can't access the server. So that is possible. I normally don't mess with the defaults on the system. It used to be something that was highly trained on security, as you could set the security log never to overwrite and then to disable the remote access to the server if it filled up with a group policy setting. Has anybody used Event Viewer to troubleshoot your computer before?
Didn't even know it was here.
So here, I've got some error messages. I'm not really noticing anything affecting my system, but error messages. What I would do for troubleshooting, I would look at the security log and I'd basically search for the event ID. I can get this thing to halfway show on my screen. So on a Google search, I have event ID 8280. I'm dyslexic, 8208. The Windows Server event ID. We'll hit enter. And this one happens to security-SPP is the source. Some of these are from, other programs can have an event ID. So you also sometimes have to put up in the search field the source that it came from. But here on the third link down, see where I got security SPP event ID. I'm going to click on that and read up 8208. Source Microsoft Windows Security SPT. Does it tell me anything? No. Let me search for that. Microsoft's got a support ticket on it. You're seeing one or more of the following IDEs logged in the application log. Acquisition of general ticket failed. Does that match what we've seen? Acquisition of general ticket failed. Yep. So the problem? The system did not have appropriate internet access to be able to obtain genuine Windows activation ticket. Cause, you opted into the Customer Experience Improvement Program. You installed the Desktop Experience feature, which then installs the Microsoft Store. One of those two is probably the cause. Resolution. Do one of those two bullets there to possibly solve the issue. Or you could just ignore it because it's not causing any problems on the computer. And that's how you would troubleshoot. And just simply Google. Do any of y'all actually have that event error popping up? If you look at your event viewer and scroll, you do? Well, how about let's take a break and let's try these resolutions when we come back from break and see if it might possibly solve.
You did that off of the, yeah.
So resume recording. So we're going to try one of these resolutions and see if it works here either. Oh, where's it? Is there a caller? Does it say caller anywhere in this? I don't see where it says caller anywhere. Okay, but before you try to attempt to fix that possible problem, you can filter out the current log, and you can tell to filter out by error and hit OK, and then it shows you just the errors instead of showing you 21,000 things to try to scroll up and down through. It looks like that this here program happened on the 16th, the 9th, the 2nd, 25th, 18th. It doesn't happen too often, but you have other errors too. Some of them may be just Microsoft consoles and stuff failing to launch. With this 8208, something else you can even filter down further. You can search by event ID and error, hit OK, and you can narrow it all the way down, and you can see exactly how many times something's been happening on your system. Because if you have a list of 21,000 to look through, it's kind of hard to scroll and pick them all out. But that's another monitoring thing. How often does this happen? It looks like about once a week. Kind of looking that way. And then of course you can clear the filter. And after you clear the filter, you see all of that, and how there's a way to really tell that that's happening once a week if you didn't filter it out. I don't think there really is a smart way to do that other than filtering down. Open Server Manager and clear the participating checkbox to opt out of the CEIP program. Okay, well, where would that checkbox be? Windows Feedback and Diagnostic settings. Oh, that's not the page. I wanted that page. So I'm going to try to execute that. Why does that keep popping up? Weird. It's Talon's fault.
Good thing we're the only tail on here.
Okay, another site says go to Task Scheduler. On the Task Scheduler page. So I just searched for opt out of CEIP. That's where I'm getting that from. So on the Task Scheduler page, expand out Microsoft, Windows, Application Experience. And it says to disable all of these, to disable the CEIP. Ta-da! Last time this was run was on the 16th. Well, that's probably what was causing it. Really test it out. We'd have to realize that it's happening every week, and then we'd have to test it again next week, about Wednesday or so. We'll see if it popped up again, or next Friday, look Event Viewer and see if it had gone away. We can still kind of do a shotgun approach and attempt to see if disabling the Microsoft store and server manager doesn't have Microsoft Store. So it had to be this part. We can make sure the Microsoft Store doesn't exist. GP edit. .msc. Launching the gpedit.msc will show us that looking under computer configuration, administrative templates, Windows components, and looking for store. It actually does have that. Turn off the store application. That can be enabled. So we tried both workarounds. We found both of them. We probably won't have that error anymore. What if you needed the Microsoft Store? Well, then you'd probably need internet for it to work. And then you probably wouldn't have had that error. So if we don't have internet, we turned off the store and we turned off that scheduled task that Microsoft had. Now we shouldn't have the error anymore, and we have no intentions of ever having internet. Internet's bad. Nobody needs the internet. We did fine back before the internet. We didn't have reality TV shows before the internet. I don't think we did. Okay, so no questions over Event Viewer, and you kind of seen how to search and troubleshoot. Really cool tool to use. The last portion that we want to go over about monitoring the system is Performance Monitor. There's a Resource Monitor and Performance Monitor, two different ones. I'm going to go ahead and launch both of them.
So there's a monitor, there's a resources.
Yes.
Thought so.
So two different ones. The Resource Monitor kind of looks similar to Task Manager, where you have your 60-second charts over here. My CPU is running at 100% for some reason. That's because Performance Monitor is running heavily. I guess still trying to start everything up over there in the background. So quick overview of everything: disk activity, network activity, memory activity, look at specifics. So performance monitors, just a different charting than Task Manager, but that's kind of, there's network. That's a little faster to figure out what process IDs are using the network. So instead of trying to use netstat, looking at the process IDs in netstat, open up Task Manager, looking under details and finding the process ID to correlate what's actually connected to the network. Look here, performance monitor has a tab for it. It says, here's everything connected to the network. So that's really fast. And you can also see what's hogging your bandwidth. LSASS is hogging my bandwidth. Okay, it's not very much. 1,200 bytes per second. Total. Yeah, that's pretty lightweight stuff there. Disk activity. What application is consuming your read and write? So you have the total, and then you have current per second. And if your hard drive's churning away at your house, you can't hear SSDs though. If you're on an SSD, that's the bad thing. But you can diagnose maybe some application is just going haywire. Amount of memory each application's using, amount of processing power. So resource monitors probably got some cool information. And if you know, has anybody ever used Resource Monitor before? Did you know it even existed? Anyone? Anyone? Sean? Jared? Brian? They're silent. I think they're asleep.
I've
I'm here.
opened it before. I don't think I've actually used it to check anything before, though.
And that's probably the coolest tab, and the one that I've probably most used is the network tab to figure out what processes are running. That or disk. I've always got computers that are running slow, trying to figure out what's going on. Why is my computer running slow? I will tell you one thing, the key monitor is memory. Your computer's running slow and you don't have enough memory, it'll make everything else look bad. Why will it make everything else look bad? So if you use physical memories up near the 100% mark, you could also use the task manager and actually the performance monitor would probably be better to look. You want to look at your page file usage and see if your page file usage is being hit. Here's total physical memory in use, 1100 meg, there's 473 meg available. If you don't have available RAM on your system, that could mean that the swap file is being utilized, and that can make everything else look like that it's a problem. You might be looking at disk utilization over here and it's running at 100% disk utilization, high queue, high disk utilization, because it's having to page stuff in and out of RAM because you don't have enough physical RAM, and that'll make it look like your hard disk or your controller card is slow down on your system, and you're trying to upgrade your hard disk when actually it's your RAM that's bottlenecking you. it'll also cause the CPU to spike up because it'll be using a lot more processing power to keep track of what is on the hard drive and what is in memory, being able to swap back and forth. So low amounts of memory will make everything else look bad. Even your network will feel sluggish because it will be busy swapping stuff in and out of memory because there won't be enough RAM for it to receive and process frames. So your network will slow way down. Like I said, low memory is the #1 thing you look at first. After you figure out the memory is not the problem, typically the next thing you start looking at is disk. Make sure your disk is not the problem. And really, the processor is one of the last things to look at. And then moving down to network, if you're having some type of performance issue. Okay, performance monitor. This is where you baseline. Your performance monitor can have charts over a longer period of time. Here we've got it showing over still a minute. But you can record these charts. And you can collect and run reports and stuff for baselining your system. So what am I looking at? I'm looking at simply just the processor right now. And I can make some changes. I can add things to look at. There's a lot of stuff to look at.
It's sending us Morse code.
So in performance monitor and alert, you can hit the plus, and there's just tons and tons of things to look at. There's a processor here. You can look at processor stuff. Where's my paging file? So I'm going to click on paging file. And I've got one page file.sys. I can add that and hit OK. And as I click through these, I can processor time looks like it stopped. As you click on each one of these in the bottom, you can look at their utilization. And usage peak. So I'm actually using some page file. But as long as it's not increasing and jumping around too much, you're probably okay. But yeah, we are using one page file because we only got, I think we got what, 4 gig of RAM of these, each one. Let me look on my host system. It's running all the hypervisors and stuff, and all the Vayon, and all the Zoom call. You can also check out Performance Monitor on your Windows 10 machine at home too, because you should have one. So there's my processor, but I'm going to switch this. I'm going to remove the and uncheck the processor later. But I'm going to scroll up and find the page file. Add that in. I'm going to uncheck the processor utilization so I can only view the page file sys. I'm only using about 10% of it. So if your page file sys has high utilization, you might have some issues. But yeah, there's just tons and tons and tons of stuff you can monitor. What to monitor is basically what your system's doing and what you need to look at for problems in your system. Let's find memory here. So if you're monitoring memory, page faults per second may be something you want to look at. Page faults per second would be the processors needing access to something in RAM, and it's either been, it has a fault, it can't find it in RAM, so it's either got to pull it off the hard drive or pull it off the page file sys. So having high page faults can also indicate not enough RAM in your system. What else to look at in here? Processor. So I would actually have to double check on that. With VMware adds a monitoring tool for Performance Monitor, and you can search for something called ready time. And that's basically the number of applications that are ready for the processor to take instruction and work on it, but the processor is being constrained by like CPU or workload. So you're getting a lot of stuff that's building up a queue. Go, hey, I need the processor to do this math problem for me. But there's a bunch of other stuff processor's doing and it can't get to it. So the higher the ready value, the more chance that it's your processor causing issues. So we cover that in VMware, but we don't have, this is not a virtual machine running under VMware infrastructure, so we don't have that that third-party performance monitor queue in here. power meter. I don't know if I can actually read the power from a virtual machine. Doesn't look like it'll read the power because it's a VM, not a physical machine. Yeah, some of these systems will have where you can watch how much the power supply is pulling over time. And you can go in and set up reports. And you can save these reports over a period of time and create charts of maybe RAM utilization or power utilization. And you can go back and view reports later, like maybe over a week time period. And you can set that as a baseline. So if you start having some performance issues in the future, you can run a new report and let it monitor for a few days and compare it to your baseline to see if anything's changed from last month to this month. And you've heard of baselining in Cisco, right? Y'all studied that? Anybody? Baseline, Cisco? Yes? No? They ought to keep that in the curriculum. I would think they would. What is a baseline?
A line that's the base.
A line that's the base.
Yeah.
Baseline is getting a computer or something set up for a company to start using. Getting its operating system and any software required in order to get it operational.
Yeah, it's pretty close to baseline. And basically, normal performance. What does the charts look like when it's operating normally and you're able to use it and your customer's happy? That's what's called a baseline. So you can define new reports and stuff. I don't have any reports being run. And monitoring is not something that's very entertaining to sit and watch. But you can create new data collector sets, like I said, and collect data over a period of time and then look at it in charts. You can also export it in like CSV files and import it into your own database or analytics tool to build your own charting and stuff. Why would you need to chart stuff over time? Anybody? Let's look at something you might want to chart over time. Physical volume. Oh, let's see volume. I'm looking here real quick. Disk Q-Link, let's see disk capacity. Virtual disk. Did it add in here? Didn't have that counter in. Move all counter. Well, just in a virtual machine, I'd have to do this from the host. I don't see a counter for total storage space utilization. That might have to be a PowerShell script where you'd have to write and collect data points like every day. What percentage of hard disk space is free? And then chart that. Put it in a PowerPoint presentation with a little line graph showing that, hey, we use this much space of a disk this month, and the next month we're here, the next month we're here, and the next month we're here, and then do a projected. It's like, that this month we're going to run out of space, and you can show your boss and go, I need $8,000 for some new drives. Bosses like charts. That's why some of these charting tools are needed. If you're watching performance capacity and you show them over a trend of a month or year, and you're showing the line go up, and then you do a projection and go, hey, we're going to need more capacity at this point in time. Otherwise, you go to your boss and say, hey, we need some more hard drives. I'm like, well, that costs some money. You can wait on that. Especially if you don't have any way to show them that, look, we're about to run out of space. And if you can't show that, the boss is going to not buy you new hard drives, and you're going to wait until you actually run out of space and the company can't work anymore, and then he's going to fire you because you wouldn't convince him that he needed more hard drives. Stuff like that happens. Okay, well, that finishes out chapter 12 and all the cool stuff to kind of look at and pay attention to. I hope you pay attention to the event viewer more often now if you're trying to troubleshoot issues. And that you can look at your resource monitor and task manager more often too, if you're trying to troubleshoot performance issues. Next week, we run into DHCP. Why? Because he wouldn't get out of the way. That's why we ran into him. And we were looking at our phone while we were running, so we didn't see him in front of us. That's why we're going to run into it. Okay, that's a corny joke.